this is the other fucking thing. If you're 18, 19, 20, early 20s, and there's a company that you like go into that company and be the photocopy boy, be the coffee girl, be the whatever you can be. Like, it's really important that people realize, particularly when you're young, you're gonna do your apprenticeship, right? I never did a formal apprenticeship, but my apprenticeship was 5 years failing in business, doing stuff that I didn't like. Right, that was my apprenticeship. And so recognize that you're not going to have a magic wand and day one be CEO of a hugely successful business or have your perfect job, but get your foot in the door.
Today we have best-selling author, entrepreneur, investor, founder of the Entourage, and episode number 10, Jack Delosa. Jack, mate, thank you for coming on.
So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, just for the listeners, broad scope, 2019, been a big year for you. Let's have a bit of a rundown on 2019. How's that been?
It's been a great year. I find every year goes faster, don't you reckon? Yeah. Like every year just goes fast. You blink and it's gone.
Christmas.
Feels like the last Christmas was like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So it's been a huge year. I mean, this year for us has been about scaling the Entourage, really. I mean, we started in 2010 with some dissatisfaction with how entrepreneurs are and are not developed in Australia. And today we're Australia's largest training institution and community of small to medium-sized business owners who want to scale their business. So for us, this year has been about driving the movement on an international basis, which has been great. We've built a community in our program called Elevate, which helps 7-figure business owners become 8-figure business owners. So we've grown to a point now where we've got about $450 million in annualized revenue, cumulatively speaking, in that group. And so, yeah, it's been growing the team. We started to build our team on an international basis this year as well. So we've now got a team of about 20 people over in Manila in the Philippines, which is going incredibly well. So, yeah, we've built an incredibly strong foundation here in Australia. In 2019 for us has kind of been the beginnings of an international expansion.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So before we dive, because we like to dive from the start, but before we do, what started the Entourage? What was it about? Did you found it alone, or did you have the idea? How did the Entourage come about?
Yeah, so I founded it in 2010. Entrepreneurship is a rising tide globally. More and more people are becoming dissatisfied with the traditional education path, the traditional career path. A lot of us might look at our parents, for example, who have been incredible parents and incredible human beings, but might have taken a more traditional route for 40 or 50 years and never perhaps got the rewards or the fulfillment they perhaps could have or should have if they took a more independent path that was more suited to who they are. And so I think more and more people are becoming disillusioned with the normal way of doing things. And so as a huge part of that, more and more people are starting to look at doing their own thing and taking matters into their own hands. And, there's even an argument today that job security will be almost as high for an entrepreneur soon as it is for an employee. And so we can't even argue anymore that the traditional path is a safer route, because even that's becoming questionable. And so more and more people are looking to take matters into their own hands, do something they love, do something that's aligned to who they are, do something that's going to enable them to grow, do something that's going to enable them to become creative. And whether that's start their own business or not is completely up to them. It's my message isn't start your own business. My message is figure out who you are, figure out what kind of life you want to live, and then build a career and or a business that's completely aligned to that, because we're in an era where you can. And so that was the foundation upon which the Entourage was founded. And it was really out of dissatisfaction for traditional university and TAFE don't do a good job at preparing people to go out and start businesses. And so someone needed to do that. And so that's the gap that we now fill.
Mm. Yeah, brilliant. And it's interesting you say that as well, and highlight the fact that it's not just to start your own business. It's about finding out who you are, because a lot of people, they're not made to start businesses, or their personality doesn't match starting a business or whatever it might be. And so, but something that you've built here allows even the employees, although they haven't started this business, like even just walking in here, everyone just are so in touch with who they are within the business, and they're just so good at their jobs and they love it. So they've obviously found their path.
It's exactly right, man. It's exactly right. And that's one of the things I love about, the upcoming generations is they are looking to do something that's meaningful, and that's not, as you say, for the majority of people, that's not going to be go start your own business, but it is to say, take the time to determine who you are, work out what your personal values are, and then take the time to find something that aligns with that. For some people, that will be a path that resembles the traditional path. Some people, that'll be working at KPMG, the most traditional thing that you can do. But if that's suited to who you are, then go do that. As Socrates had said, the unexamined life isn't worth living. And so provided whatever path that you're choosing has been examined and considered and thought about, then, particularly at a young age, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, man. So now take us back, because obviously there's a lot behind you and the Entourage as well. But take us back, because I'm interested to dive into where all this has come from, all this intelligence. So what was it like for you growing up in your earlier years? So as far as you can remember, being a kid in the household, what interested you?
So when I was 6, my parents ran a not-for-profit organisation called Breaking the Cycle, which isn't much different to what you guys are doing with Bridge the Gap, right? And Breaking the Cycle would take long-term unemployed youth off the street, literally, put them through a 3-month training program and then help facilitate them into employment. And they could only take a certain number of young adults each year, and so they deliberately choose the people that were from the most challenging of backgrounds, in and out of jail, from abusive homes, drug addicted, that kind of stuff. And then they put them through a program, and these people would absolutely transform. They'd go from being in and out of jail to developing a skill set and developing an understanding of who they are, and developing an understanding of the kind of life they want to live, and developing a vision for themselves, and it would fundamentally change their lives. And so, I would wag school a lot of the time, and I'd be sitting. So Mum was the head trainer at Breaking the Cycle. Dad was the managing director, and so I'd wag school a lot of the time, sitting in Mum's classroom as she taught life skills to young adults. And so that's where a lot of my foundations were built, I suppose. And that taught me a few things. It taught me that the traditional path certainly isn't for everybody, and this is like, how long ago is it? It's like 26 years ago, right? And so it's only become increasingly true since then. But the traditional path doesn't work for everybody. Some people don't have the easiest, on-ramp into life. Regardless of where somebody comes from, if they get around the right people, get around the right messaging, get around the right TLC, they can fundamentally change who they are. Breaking the Cycle was a not-for-profit organisation, so it was reliant on government funding. The government pulled the funding, the organisation collapsed. So I think that's where I got my commercial side from, in that I always wanted to build businesses that were influential and that made people's lives better, but I wanted to do it in a way that was profitable and sustainable in and of itself, such that we weren't reliant on government funding or charitable handouts or whatever it might be.
So at what age were you when that collapsed?
I think I was about 10 or 11 years old, yeah.
And when did you start to get into the entrepreneurship, or even before then? What was like high school like? What was your peer group like? What was getting into, around the party scene? What was that all like?
I wasn't the best student, man.
I think we can all vouch for that, yeah. It's funny, there's a common theme there.
But there is a common theme, and let's talk about it. Often, in my view, the people that have a great deal of potential to go out into the real world and to create something meaningful don't fit into the academic world. 100%. And if you look at school, and if you listen to this podcast and you're in school, I actually do think it's a positive thing to be in school and to finish school. But don't hang your hat on it. Don't think it's the end. It's setting you up for the rest of your life, because it's not. if you look at school, what happens at school is like the opposite to what happens in the real world. Like someone stands at the front of the room and teaches you all the answers. That just doesn't happen in the real world. You need to go out and figure it out for yourself a lot of the time. And then you go into exams where it's like, sit down, don't talk to the person next to you, and remember what you've learned over the last 12 weeks or whatever. It's like if my team, so talking about my employees or me, came into this business and we sat down, we didn't talk to anybody, so we're not being resourceful, we're not leveraging the experience or the knowledge of other people. Don't look at the person next to you, don't talk to the person next to you, and just your only mode of thinking can be remember that which you've been told. So there's not even room for creative thought. Yeah. I mean, that's the polar opposite of the capabilities that's going to make someone successful in the real world, right? And so if you are successful in school, that's great, and it shows you that you've got a certain capability set that's going to set you up for, some really good careers. And that might be an accountant, it might be a lawyer, it might be a doctor. And if you're really good in school, those career paths probably light you up, and those career paths are probably what you should do. But if school doesn't light you up and it just doesn't fulfill you, like back in my day, I don't know if it's still the same, but it was like you're either really, really smart in school or you go and become a carpenter. Yeah, it was like you're either a lawyer or you're a tradie. Yeah. And it was like those are the only two. It's like fuck that. And that paradigm I hope no longer exists, because it's certainly not how the real world operates anymore.
Sure. I still remember 4 years ago, like it was if you achieve your HSC and you go well, then you're successful. If you're not, literally that was the thought pattern. And that's what we're trying to set up here with the podcast and with this business, is that way of thinking. 100%. Doesn't need to be the way of thinking.
And there's nothing wrong with being a tradie, and there's nothing wrong with being an accountant. Sure. But there are, that's probably 0.2% of the options that are available to people today. So, so I was not a good student because I was independently minded. I would constantly be asking my teachers why, and I'd be challenging them, not in a rude or aggressive way, just in a curious way. And a lot of the time, traditional education is set up in a way to squash curiosity, which it shouldn't. And I was super rebellious. For me, life has always been about adventure. And when you're a teenager, adventure, you can find adventure in really destructive things. And I certainly did, and my brothers certainly did. And, one of my brothers died as a result of drug use when I was 18. He was 21. He, died from drugs. So, these kinds of behaviors that we think are cool and we think are adventurous when we're in our teenage years are incredibly dangerous a lot of the time, and you don't fully realize or appreciate it yet. And so my whole thing is like, because my brother and I were very, 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 very similar. Very similar, independently minded, didn't give a fuck what anybody said, seeked adventure and seeked kind of rebelliousness in it. Like that's what made us feel alive. Anything other than that was just boring. But what the difference was, I think fundamentally, was whereas I found personal development and I was hugely interested in management of humans, I was interested in leadership, and I was interested in business. Tom never found that thing that he was passionate about. And so whereas he followed those destructive paths a little bit further than I did, and he ultimately paid the price for it. So I think my sort of core messaging around, if you do have a rebellious streak in you, the thing is, you want to be aware of the risks of drugs and alcohol and all of that sort of stuff. But what's even more powerful is if you can find something you're passionate about and lean into that, you'll just find that, you don't want to drink all that much because you're too fucking busy doing something you love. You definitely don't want to touch drugs because it takes 3 days to recover, and that's 3 days out from doing what you love. And so whether what you love is sewing, whether it's guitar, whether it's setting up Facebook campaigns, whether it's talking on stage, whether it's doing a podcast, whether it's setting up a YouTube channel, whether it's going and working at a startup as an employee and getting a huge breadth and depth of opportunity, whether it's fucking going traveling for a few years, like whatever it is, find something that you're passionate about and engaged in. And 99% of the time that'll fall outside the traditional path. Don't expect your passion to come from your careers counsellor. Because you go speak to your careers counsellor, it's like, given your scores, you could be a vet or you can be a high school teacher. And you're like, well, fuck, both those things sound terrible. I might as well go get drunk, right? It's like you have to think outside the square of whatever high school is telling you should be doing.
Absolutely.
How much of an effect did that have on you, your brother passing?
I think a significant effect because it increased my drive. Because Tom was like exceptionally intelligent and exceptionally capable.
In what way?
In a lot of ways. I mean, in a rebellious way mainly, but he was highly intellectual, so he was highly intelligent in the traditional sense. But because he was such an independent thinker and he had such a rebellious streak, he was intelligent, but like in a creative way, in an outside the box kind of a way. He was really good with people, was really likable, very strong character, high integrity, respected by everybody. You know, he just had never seen a picture of anything that excited him. Like I remember we'd have conversations with my parents and stuff, and they'd be like, you know, you spend most of your life working, and so find something you love doing. It's like, that's the problem. Like, everyone just spends most of their life working, and that seems boring to me. And so he didn't have enough of a reason to stop going down these kind of destructive paths. So it made me more driven, because there are a lot of Toms out there who have a lot of potential and have a lot of capacity. And if and when channeled in the right direction, along the right path, they can be exceptionally successful, whatever that might mean for them, in their own way.
Yeah. What with that, you said it gave you a lot more drive. Where did that drive go? Where did you channel that energy? What was happening during that time that you then?
It's a really good question, man. It's a very good question. So it's a good question because I chose to channel it into business, but my first business was not something I loved doing, which is an important lesson, because I think a lot of the time we can, you know, you're 18, you're 19, you're 24, 25, however old, you're waiting for the perfect opportunity. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet. And so rather than waiting for the perfect opportunity, I'd been working a call center with Tom, funnily enough, and my manager had left to go and start his own business. Essentially, I knew that ultimately I wanted to influence the education system and I wanted to enable people to live more meaningful lives. But because I'd done my research, not in school, not in university, or reading books and just looking at influential people throughout history, I knew that in order to be influential, I needed to be a good entrepreneur. And so, and I knew that I wasn't going to start my first. I knew my first business wasn't going to be the business. It wasn't going to be the thing I had forever. I essentially just needed a training ground. I needed somewhere to do my apprenticeship. And so I called my manager who left where I was working. I said, you know, I want to do what you do. And he said, well, come into partnership with us. And I was like, I fucking loved the sound of that, because it was going to give me an opportunity to be a business owner, which is what I determined I wanted to learn about. But I also hated the idea, because I'd worked in call centers for like 4 years or something by that point and hated it. But it was like, I'd rather go and get the experience that I want to get running a company I don't want to run than staying at university or taking a slower path. And so I channeled it into business. I channeled it into personal development. And as I said, the key lesson there is don't wait for the perfect opportunity. This is the other fucking thing. If you're 18, 19, 20, early 20s, and there's a company that you like go into that company and be the photocopy boy, be the coffee girl, be the whatever you can be. Like, it's really important that people realize, particularly when you're young, you're gonna do your apprenticeship, right? I never did a formal apprenticeship, but my apprenticeship was 5 years failing in business, doing stuff that I didn't like, right? That was my apprenticeship. And so recognize that you're not going to have a magic wand and day one be CEO of a hugely successful business or have your perfect job, but get your foot in the door and take a long-term perspective and eventually work your way into creating a really meaningful life and a meaningful career.
And was channeling it into business your coping mechanism of going through, obviously, the loss of your brother? What were some of the coping mechanisms that you had? I know that I've gone through quite a big loss in my family.
Right.
And I had my own coping mechanisms, and everyone has their own. What was some of the ways that you could take your mind off it or move past it?
Man, that is such a good question. I reckon I've probably done 5,000 interviews. Nobody has ever asked me that question. It's such a good question. Before I answer it, who did you lose in your family?
So my cousin, who I named my gym after, Damon Munt Roberts, named it Dima, he was actually murdered by his own mum in a bathtub. Oh. Yeah, so he was my first cousin. He was probably like my little bro. Like your first cousin, always looks up to you, whatnot. I was like his little mentor. So yeah, he that's another story, but long story short, yeah, he was murdered. So, but that didn't hit me till later. Because I was only 11,
same.
12 at the time.
Yeah. Fuck. Yeah, right. That's rough, man. Yeah, so same with me in that it didn't hit me till later. So, because I was 18 at the time, right? And when you're 18, this is the other thing that I don't love about school is I don't really teach you anything about how to deal with stuff that comes up in life. Yeah. So I was 18. Tom was the person I was closest to in the world. I'd never envisaged a world without him, right? And so for the first 6 months, I was completely numb. Like, it was like I didn't fully understand death yet, right? Like, you don't understand the permanency of it. And so first 6 months I was numb to the point where, like, my parents would be like, where did you come from? How are you dealing with it this well? And like, it got to a point where they're actually like, you should try to open up more because there must be stuff going on for you that you're not communicating, or maybe you're just not conscious of. And it wasn't that I wasn't communicating, I was just not conscious of it. And, you know, I kind of say, like, back then I was kind of like emotionally illiterate. I didn't know how to deal with emotions yet. And so then what started happening, let's say from month 6 to 18, is what happens with emotions is when you don't process them and when you don't bring them to the surface and when you don't talk about them or cry about them, which is a hugely valuable thing to do, by the way, when you don't do those things, what will happen is that emotion will manifest in other ways. It will come out of you in other ways. It might come out when you get drunk, you get really angry. It might come out in that you become super rebellious to the point where you're self-destructive. It might come out in that you push things too far and you're actually seeking to get in trouble with police because, you know, it's just a coping mechanism. It might come out in that how you treat your partner or your family, right? It could come out in any way, shape or form. So it's really important that you lean into emotions and process them and talk about them and cry as much as you need to and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of, it's like, I think we live in a culture where it's like showing emotion is seen to be a weakness, where it's like, you know, as you grow up, everybody realizes that to show emotion and to show your true self and to show your true colors in terms of what's really going on for you is the most courageous thing you can do. It's the strongest thing you can do. And so for me, how it started to come out in terms of this sort of emotion was anxiety. And so I'd be in, if ever I was in like even a small group environment, I'd become super anxious, like to the point where I couldn't function, couldn't talk, couldn't smile, like, and it's actually a weird thing to think about. Like, I literally couldn't smile. Like, someone would tell a joke, everyone would be laughing, and I'd be sitting there, and I'd be so, I don't know, sad, depressed, angry, I don't know, shut down probably is the best word.
Business or like recreational, like environments?
Both, mainly recreational. Like, yeah, so not just just like fucking 24 hours a day. Like, it was just, If I was in a small group environment, socially or professionally, I'd be very anxious. I'd probably be less anxious in a business environment because you're kind of playing a role. It was probably worse in social environments. And so I got like, I don't know, 12 months into that, and I was just like, man, like I can't operate. I knew I wanted to build meaningful businesses. I knew I wanted to help other people live meaningful lives. And I literally couldn't sit around a poker table and uphold a conversation because my anxiety was that bad. And so I was like, okay, I got to do something about this. And so I went and spoke to like probably 8 to 10 different counselors, and they all said the same thing. They all said, you've got depression, take these pills. I was like, I don't have depression. My fucking brother died, so I'm upset.
Yeah.
But I don't have depression. I mean, I might be depressed temporarily. I don't. I don't have a fucking illness. I'm a human being, and something's happened, and what I'm experiencing is an appropriate response to that, and so I just need someone to talk to and someone with the right strategies, right? And so I found that to be incredibly not useful. And then I think the beginning for me it was actually my girlfriend at the time. She said you should talk more to your family, like your parents, and I've got another brother. I was like, oh no, because the other thing that happens when you go through a tragedy like this is you want to be strong for your family, and so you don't want to put it onto them. But sometimes the best gift you can give them is the gift of being able to help you. Is actually showing a bit of weakness, not weakness, but showing a bit of vulnerability, right? And there's strength in that, and giving them the opportunity to help you. And so then I started to do that, and so it was getting to a point. This is probably like a year and a half, 2 years after he's died, right? It's taken me this long to even start healing, but just starting to have conversations about how I was feeling and how I was feeling lost, and I'd done some stuff like after Tom died that I wasn't proud of, around like continuing certain behaviors around drugs and shit that I had guilt around, because it's like, man, your brother's just died from this sort of stuff, and you still... And so like I opened up to my parents about that because I was carrying guilt around it and all sorts of stuff. So that was the beginning. It's the hardest thing to do, but if you can open yourself up to the people that are closest to you, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, no, I reckon that gives an amazing insight, and we haven't had anyone on the podcast not that we know of, that has had a significant one in their life pass. And I think it's a really good topic to touch on, because whether it's a friend, whether it's a cousin, whatever it may be, you have to go through tragedy, and you have to go through the process of a grieving phase.
That's right.
And I can relate to you 100%.
That's exactly right, man.
It comes back to bite you on the ass if you don't open up about it.
Exactly. And you put it really well. You have to go through a grieving phase. Like the question I often get is like, Jack, I've had someone pass away, or I've lost a child, or whatever. Like how do I move through this? It's almost like people are looking for a shortcut to shortcut the grief. That's what's going to fuck you. Don't shortcut the grief. Lean into it and take as long as you want to and need to in order to process the grief.
Absolutely, because through adversity we come out stronger. If we try and cut that off and cut it short of what it's where it's meant to take you, what it's meant to teach you, right? It's going to make it worse.
Yeah, robs you of the learning experience, and the grief that you're shortcutting will come out. It will come out, whether it's through aggression or through anger, or in my case, anxiety, through drinking too much alcohol. Like, it will come out. So bring it out in a productive way, which is be sad. Just be sad and talk.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Did you take once these emotions started to come up? Did you take time off, or were you continuing to work through that period?
That is a very, very good question. I think I continued to work. And then there was one point where I was in between businesses, where I think I had a gap of about 3 months, which was super interesting, because that was probably like 2 years later. Okay. And even then, what happens with me is when I would take time off, that's when more emotion would arise. Because when you're busy, what stress does is it pushes down a lot of your natural human emotion. So if you're busy and you're stressed and you're thinking about career or whatever, it does suppress your natural emotion. And so, yeah, when I did then take a gap, more came out, which again was great. But I mean, a lot of people don't have the luxury of taking time off, and I didn't either. So that's fine. You don't have to stop everything. It's more about what you do when you're at home and when you do have downtime. Yeah. Don't distract yourself. Don't, play more PlayStation. Don't just drink more. Like, actually sit down and be with yourself.
From the outside looking in, and also me knowing you just from being a member here at the Entourage, you've spent a lot of time down at the Blue Mountains. You spent a lot of time developing yourself. Why is that?
Yeah, good question, man. So, there's a quote, I don't know who it's from, but it talks about, most of humanity's problems arise because we have an inability to sit in a quiet room alone and think. And so, again, most people seek distractions, right? Like, I'm either at work, or then I'm at the footy, or then I'm watching the footy, and then I'm at the pub, and then I'm going to dinner with this person, and then I'm going to lunch with that person, and then, we try and fill our lives with stuff. And I always had a yearning for more meaning than just doing surface level stuff. And so once a quarter, I go to the Blue Mountains by myself or with my partner for anywhere from sort of 3 to 5 to 6 days. And we don't take the computers. We take our phones, but the phones are turned off, turn them on once a day, make sure there's no emergencies, rock and roll, turn them off again. And we light the fire, go for walks, journal, meditate, sleep, all of that sort of stuff. Because what it does is it reconnects you with yourself. It's like a check-in point to go to reflect on the last quarter. What worked for me over the last quarter? What didn't work for me over the last quarter? How am I feeling? How are my energy levels? Is there anything that I want to change in my life right now? As I look up and I, start to envisage the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years, do I like who I'm becoming? How can I be even better? How can I contribute more to the people around me? And so it's the checking back in with self that I find it sounds weird because I'm in Blue Mountains by myself doing nothing for 3 days, but it's the most productive time in my calendar because it's where the most answers come to me, the most solutions come to me, the most clarity comes to me. And so that when I come back to Sydney or back to my everyday life and get busy in the doing again, I actually know where I'm going and I know what I'm doing and I know why I'm doing it for, because I've taken the time to have that clarity. And so whether the people listening go to Blue Mountains for 3 days or whether you go to the beach by yourself for 3 hours, it doesn't matter what it is, but find time to spend by yourself, not on your phone, not distracting yourself with the stuff, but journaling. How you feeling? How you doing? Where you going? What are you loving? What are you not loving? What can you change? How do you be a better person? How do you sculpt your character? All of these really important questions.
It's inspired me. I'm actually booked to go away this weekend by
Nice.
myself.
Where?
Just up Caves Beach, like 40 minutes from home.
Love it.
So
good man. How long for?
2 nights, but I want to process the year by myself.
Love it.
Process the year and coming into the new year. But
so good.
Going off the back of that and sort of routines and rituals, what does a day look in life for you maybe from a morning routine perspective and like an evening perspective?
Yeah.
What does a day in the life look like from you from the alarm clock going off?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I mean, I'm sure everyone says it's different every day, which it is. But like if I sort of talk a bit of a sort of generalized template, I love waking up early. I love waking up early for a few reasons. Firstly, it means that you sleep better that night. So if you're up at 5 or 5:30 that night, you're going to sleep really well. Secondly, is when you're up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, you've got, whether it's 1 hour before the kids get up, whether it's 2 or 3 hours before you've got to go to work, whatever it is, you've got time, and in that time is space, stillness, and silence that you can fill with whatever you want to indulge in, right? The other thing is you just woke up, so your brain's really fresh. So if the thing you choose to indulge in that morning is work stuff, you're going to be really effective at it. And so I like to get up early, and I will either go to the gym and train, or I will meditate, or if there's a particular project I'm working on that requires space to think through it, like it requires deep intellectual work, then it'll be that.
Yeah.
You got to get up early, and yeah, once you get up early and you do it for a week or two, you get addicted to your mornings. Mm-hmm. The other thing it does, getting up at 5:30, is you fall in love with your morning so much that you naturally drink significantly less alcohol, and you naturally start going to bed earlier because you're looking forward to the morning. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'll then try and do something that I enjoy in the morning. Yeah, so whether it's one of those three things. I might train and then work, or work and then meditate, or whatever it is. But I'll do that for most of the morning. Usually it's then business stuff from anywhere from 9 till 6 or 7 p.m. I try not to finish working too late. I've got a partner at home who I absolutely love spending time with, but I also like having an hour or two just wind down time at the end of the day, because again, I find that I sleep a lot better if I have some separation between stopping working and going to bed. If I stop working at 7:50 and I'm in bed by 8, I mean, it sounds weird, but sometimes I am in bed by 8 because I'm up at 5, right? Yeah. And so like it sounds so geeky, and if I was 18 years old listening to myself talk, I would think I was such a loser. But there's nothing I love more than going to bed early, because if I feel tired at 7:30, I'm like, I'm going to bed. I'm so excited I'm going to bed now, because it means I'm going to be able to get up at 4:30 or 4. I'm going to have more time in the morning.
Yeah. They both tease me about it. I'm in bed by 8 o'clock every night.
I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
Me and the missus were asleep still light outside last night. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah. And in the beginning, you kind of ashame yourself. You're like, sure, I should be like out partying or something. But then you learn to love it, right? You're like, no, this is cool. And so it's like an hour or two of just relaxing, often reading, maybe, doing some learning through videos or whatever it might be, personal development type stuff, spiritual development type stuff, early night. Pretty easy.
Tell us, with your meditations in the morning, is there a specific type of meditation that you practice? Have you done any kind of training, or how do you like to approach that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I do Vedic meditation. So Vedic meditation is where you're meditating, you've got a mantra, which is like a noise or a word that has no meaning that you repeat over and over again in your mind. So a general mantra that a lot of people are probably familiar with is something like Om, Om. It's a sound that has no meaning, right? I mean, it's got inherent meaning in terms of how they derived that particular sound, but it's not a word per se.
Sure.
So the reason why Vedic meditation is so powerful is when you start meditating, the biggest misperception that people have around meditation is, I need to sit down and not think. And it's almost an impossible expectation to have of oneself. I mean, if you were born in India and when you were 6 you moved to an ashram and all you've done since is meditate, clean and cook, then these guys can sit down and not think for 36 hours, not a problem. But if you're in the Western world and you're at school and you've got a job, or you're at uni, or you've got a job, you've got partner, you've got rent, you've got parents, you've got all of this different stuff. To sit down and not think for 20 minutes you're just not going to do it. Yeah. And so you'll have a very busy mind. And so if you sit down and try not to think, often you'll continue to think because you can't not think. And then you'll think about the fact that you're thinking, but you shouldn't be thinking. And then you'll get frustrated because you're thinking when you shouldn't be thinking. And you're like, I might as well be doing something more productive with my time. And so I did that for 5 years. I did try and do silent meditation or guided meditation with apps, and it just didn't work for me. My mind is too busy, and I find this is true for like 99% of people. So Vedic meditation is really effective because what the mantra does, you're just repeating it over again in your mind. You're not saying it out loud. It stills the mind and it steals the mind, and it gives the mind something to focus on. And you will find yourself thinking, but when you do, you just come back to the mantra, keep repeating the mantra, and you'll find yourself thinking about what's for dinner or whatever it might be. Come back to the mantra. And so the mantra is your vessel to kind of come back to and to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so Vedic meditation is it's the most effective meditation methodology I've found for like the vast majority of people.
That's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
How do you want to be remembered? What's your vision for the world? But I know your vision, mission, values is one of your favourite topics to talk about. But how do you want to be remembered?
It's a very interesting question. I mean, as little as a year ago, I probably would have had a very definitive answer for that. My answer has probably changed substantially, and I haven't thought about it up until now, which is why you've got me thinking. My emphasis today, and it took me 32 years to get here, but the true answer for me today would be, to be honest, I don't really mind whether I am remembered. I, Jack Delosa, am remembered. It's less about, because it's kind of an ego thing, right? It's like, and that's not a bad thing. If you to want to be remembered for a certain achievement or a certain accomplishment is a really noble ideal and noble pursuit. It's a really good thing. I'm probably at the point now where it's less about what do I want to be remembered for, and more about what can I contribute while I'm here to create some form of ongoing structural change, which would be to elevate human consciousness, to enable human beings, whether it's 5 people, whether it's 5,000 people, whether it's 5 million people or 5 billion people. I'm still working that bit out, but to live more consciously. And what I mean by consciously, all the stuff, like this has been a really good discussion, right? All the stuff we've been discussing. If everybody asks themselves, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in the world? How do I best contribute the most while I'm here? What are my strengths that I should play to? What are my weaknesses that I shouldn't really worry about? How do I be a really good human being? And then they lived their lives more meaningfully, not more meaningfully, but they lived their lives more consciously. 99% of the problems that we face as a species would go away. Like, global warming is a consciousness problem. We continue to treat the planet in a way that's unsustainable. Terrorism and international conflict is a consciousness problem. We continue to think I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm willing to kill you because you don't believe what I believe. It's a consciousness problem. Businesses taking advantage of each other and taking advantage of consumers and taking advantage of the planet is a consciousness problem. It's what underpins it all is human consciousness, right? And so the impact that I want to have, as opposed to how I want to be remembered, is to help catalyze in some way an elevation of human consciousness.
That's cool. And just from that response itself, it just goes into and solidifies how conscious you are of who you are and who you want to be. And I think that comes down to daily practice.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right, man. Meditating, reading, the more you can engage in daily practices that make you more conscious, the more conscious you become.
Final question, and we've loved this discussion. It's been an amazing discussion. Normally we do it based on self, but I think we want to ask, you have experienced everything that you've experienced now, but you get to sit down with a Tom who's 18 in a bad way.
Yeah.
What advice would you just sitting down at a coffee shop, there's a kid that's in a similar situation, what piece of advice you would give him experiencing everything you've experienced? Because it seemed like you knew sort of the direction you're heading in from an early age from an entrepreneurship, but it seemed like Tom was a little bit more lost. What piece of advice would you give?
I would summarize it by saying when the voice inside of you is louder than the voices outside of you, that's when you've begun to master your life. And, there's a concept I call OPRs, which is other people's rules. And so as you're growing up, particularly when you're young, and when you're old as well, but particularly when you're young, you get surrounded by people with opinions. Whether it's your parents, whether it's your teachers, whether it's your principal, whether it's your careers counsellor, whether it's the police, whether it's the magistrate, whether it's your friends, whether it's your girlfriend, your boyfriend, everyone's got an opinion. And you need to be able to distinguish between what's true for me and what's other people's rules. And so other people's rules is you have to go to university. No, you don't. Other people's rules is you have to get a job climbing the corporate ladder. No, you don't. Other people's rules is it takes money to make money. No, it doesn't. Other people's rules is you have to get married. No, you don't. Other people's rules is, you got to have kids, right? No. Having kids is a great thing. I'm going to have kids, but I'm going to have kids because I chose to have kids, not because it's the thing to do. And so it's like you want to wade through and sift your way through all of the opinions and all of the bullshit that you have ever heard from pretty much anybody and discount it all, like put it all to the side and then go, okay, if I was to put all of that to the side and come back to what's true for me, what would that be? What do I enjoy doing? What excites me? And the answer might be, I don't know what I enjoy doing. Okay, in the next 6 months, if you could do anything, you could do anything that you enjoy, what would that be, right? What do I value in life? What kind of life do I want to set up? Who do I want to surround myself with? Do I want to make a lot of money, or do I not want to make a lot of money? Do I want to run my own business? Do I not want to run my own business? What kind of people do I want to be surrounded with? Like, if you just assume the position that every single thing in your life is controlled by you, you're causing it all. And so if you had a blank canvas, and on that blank canvas you could build any life you wanted, which you can, what kind of a life would you build? And it's not to say that you need to have all of the answers straight away, because often you won't. And often at 18 or 19, all you will know is your preferred next step. And so just take that next step. And then after that, the step after that will illuminate. And then a step after that will illuminate. And the step after that will illuminate. And even if it's one step at a time. But do your best to put all the cultural conditioning and other people's opinions and other people's rules to the side. Come back to self and do what's right for you. And there's only one caveat to that in doing what's right for you. It's like, let's call it a congruency test. Is it good for me? Is it good for others? Is it good for the planet? Right? If it meets those three criteria, do it, and do it unapologetically. Don't give a fuck about what anyone else says. Is it good for me? Is it good for other human beings? Is it good for the planet? If it's tick, 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 go and do that motherfucking thing right now.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
I love it. I love it. Man, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Instagram's probably the best place. It's probably where I'm most active. So it's just at Jack Delosa on Instagram.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day, mate. We really appreciate it. We really hope, and I can 100% already see and hearing boys reaching out to us and yourself off the back of when we launch this in 2020. So thank you so much for spending some time with us and coming on.
Keep doing the work you're doing, boys. This is incredibly inspiring. The world needs more of it. So keep at it.
Cheers, mate.
Well done. Yes, sir.